speak to us a little bit about why fascia has been ignored by the medical community for so long, and what made you recognize its importance all those years ago?
I think fascia was something that just kind of got in the way of things, and how they originally, when they went into cadavers, because the tissues were dried out, you would start to see these lines of fascia, and you'd go, "Oh, well, that's an ITB. That's this thing right there." It's not a blend of the entire leg there. It is just the ITB. It is the ITB band, and therefore it is a separate entity from the leg, from the femur, from the muscle that is surrounding it. And so when those things happen all over the body, you're starting to think in terms of, oh, well, that's okay, that's a piece of cartilage and that's a tendon, and you start putting them in these categories when everything is actually a blend of everything else. And so you'll have that muscle tissue, but that muscle tissue will be surrounded by connective tissue, and the next cell, literally next to it, will be, or fibril if you want, next to it also is encased in connective tissue. So you've got everything is encased in connective tissue, and you think of a third of our body is connective tissue, then you can't get away from it. And so when you look at what's going on in there, and I figured this out was just simply trial and error, working with people that did not lock, that then locked, and suddenly they started getting results. People who shortened their body on purpose so that it didn't hurt as much. That became a mantra, you might say, for no, you've got to stretch that out. And they would say, yes, but that doesn't matter. And I was trained in Rolfing, which is interesting because in Rolfing you lie, and they like to talk about taking you out of gravity. Okay, first off, nobody gets taken out of gravity unless you're in space. But what they would do is they would have you bend their knees. So everybody in a Rolfing session bent their knees. So what you did was you took all the slack and you put more slack into the whole system. So when you worked here, nothing was affected in your knees and your legs or anything like that when you were working on an arm. So you literally took everything out that was slack, everything in the body. I shouldn't say take it out. You put more slack into the body by making them bend their knees. And so their knees were up and their feet were flat, and that was the regular position for being on your back for Rolfing. And so I started playing with that a little bit, and when their legs were out, they would talk about it felt tighter where I was working. That should have been a hint. It wasn't, because I did it for years, and it wasn't until I started making people stretch, and where it really came home to roost was when I was working in noses of people. And when I was working in the noses of people, one of the things that would happen is that you slide your finger, and you have a finger caught on. You slide your finger into their nose, and someone once said, if I just move my fingers, it hurts worse. And I could look at their fingers and I could say, just move your finger. And when they'd move their finger, I could feel it tightening around my finger inside their nose just by them having their fingers down by their sides and tightening it. And so that also gave me a clue as to how important connective tissue was and how far away things can affect you in this incredible medium, you might say, because I quit thinking in terms of myofascial. Because it was people talked about it in terms of the musculature, and I was working in the musculature, and I never think of that anymore. I've never thought of myofascial probably for now 30 years. What I think of is the fascial system. Everything is encased in fascia, everywhere in the body, every cell, everything is in fascia. And so when you move something over here, you're pulling on it over here. I always like to think of the body as almost as if you were in a house and you wrapped everything in the house in saran wrap, everything, just wrapped everything up in saran wrap, left it where it was because that's where it was designed to be. You'd wrap it and wrap it and wrap it, and you'd put it everywhere like that, and then you go over to the next house and you wrap that, all of it in the same piece of saran wrap. And you should be able to pull on one piece of that saran wrap and something in the next house moves, because everything is tied together and it has a certain amount of space everywhere that it was designed to have. And what happens though is as we age and as we dink ourselves up, what'll happen then is that it'll put a dent in that fascial wrapping wherever that might be. If it were in a house, maybe something fell downstairs and now it's stuck in and hanging there in fascia. Well, that's pulling on everything else in that entire web of things. And so until that gets back to where it was designed to be, then you aren't going to get that part working correctly. It can't work correctly unless it's in the right place doing the job it was designed to do. Yes.